Finally, we will have a wonderful talk by Cynthia Schaffner, who is a research associate in the Department of American Decorative Arts. She received her master's degree in the history of decorative arts from the Cooper Hewitt National Design Museum. Excuse me. During the past 3 years, Cynthia has worked under Amelia Peck on several aspects of reinterpreting the 17th and early 18th century period rooms, and with Matt Thurlow, researched and wrote the text for the new interactive touch screens in the period rooms, which have been a great success, and I hope you'll all have an opportunity to try them if you haven't already. Cynthia served as research assistant to Amelia Peck on the 2007 publication American Quilts and Coverlets in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and as a research assistant for Francis Gruber Safford's collection catalog, American Furniture in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Volume 1, The Early Colonial Period. She is herself co-author of American Painted Furniture and Folk Hearts. Cynthia's lecture has a most enticing title, Tree Rings, Paint Chips, and Faded Text, Using Technology and Period Documents in Reinterpreting the American Wing Period Rooms. Please give her a warm welcome.
Thank you very much, Beth, and thank you all for being here. I don't know if you know, but Michelle Obama and Barack Obama are arriving in New York at any minute for their date night in New York City, and Prince Harry is playing polo at Governor's Island, and I think you've got the best place in New York to be here, and we're glad to have you. From the 1680 post and beam framed Heart Room from Ipswich, Massachusetts on the left, to the 1913 Frank Lloyd Wright Prairie-style living room from Minnesota on the right, sorry, Heart is on the left. The American Wing period rooms are evocative, educational, and one of the museum's most popular attractions. Twelve of the American Wing's earliest period rooms have been reconfigured, renovated, reinterpreted. The Heart Room was redated, the Verplank, Hewlett, and Alexandra Ballroom received new coats of paint, and as Matt has so beautifully described, the Winnie Room was added. And fiber optic lighting has been installed to several rooms to suggest the luminous quality of sun, candle, and fire. In addition, 10 of the American Wing's period rooms now feature interactive touchscreens, as shown here on the railing in the Verplank Room. With the magic of new technology and the swipe of a finger, the visitor can page through illustrated screens filled with contextual information about the original house, the people who lived there, the history of the room at the Met, as well as furniture label information. Teams of experts have been busy over the past 2 years, as you've seen in many of our slides. And I thank Amelia Peck, the Marissa Vilcek Curator of American Decorative Arts, for including me in her research team. And I'm delighted today to talk about the fruits of some of this research and the way in which we've reinterpreted it in the 17th and early 18th century period rooms. Let me begin by asking the basic question, just what is a period room? Period rooms are a careful combination of architectural elements rescued largely from condemned buildings with contemporaneous works of decorative art and furniture from the museum's collection. Period rooms run the gamut from completely authentic to mostly interpretive. Most rooms fall somewhere in between, with authentic architectural settings finished with original works of art in harmony with the interior. In all these rooms, moldings, and period paint is replaced. So too was worn upholstery, curtains, and rugs. Damaged furniture is repaired and conserved. Period rooms afford the viewer a chance to experience the furnishings as related to one another in time, place, and style. Here, for example, is the Richmond Room, dating to 1810, from the grand home of the Virginia lawyer William Clayton Williams. The room's rich, gleaming mahogany woodwork and blue and gray marble baseboards were removed from the Williams home before its demolition in 1936. They were placed in storage and later purchased and installed in the museum for its 1980 installation. The elegant furniture from the museum's collection and features work by two of America's premier cabinet makers, Charles-Henri Lamourier, whose pier table you see here. Whoa, there it goes. We'll get it back for you. There it is. And Duncan Phyfe is the other cabinet maker, both of whom practiced in New York City. The marble mantel is from a New York townhouse built in the 1820s. The scenic wallpaper, the Monuments of Paris, is a silk-screened reproduction of French wall covering that was produced first in Paris in 1814 and then subsequently sold in the United States. The window draperies and upholstery are modern reproductions based on 19th century patterns and styles. The result is a sophisticated Anglo-French aesthetic representative of an elegant urban American home in the early 19th century. In reinterpreting period rooms, we balance science with connoisseurship, and we draw from period paintings, drawings, design books, and town records, all amazingly, increasingly available on the internet, where we used to spend our time in libraries. Research associates and assistants can now sit with their computers. Though we are guided by the expertise and knowledge of our predecessors, we are always reviewing and revising our installations, incorporating advances in science, technology, and historic restoration. I'm going to show you some examples of those combinations. Again, as you've seen before, here we have the Hart Room. Historically, the Hart Room has thought to have been the home of Thomas and Alice Hart. The Hart Room is the earliest period room in the American wing, and it has been well known over the years to many antiquarians before it came to the museum. People have dated this room as early as 1640 and as late as 1674, which was the year of Thomas Hart's death. During the last decade, however, architectural historians, keen to know exactly when America's oldest houses were built, have used the science of dendrochronology, the dating of trees by the careful analysis of the tree rings, to scientifically date houses. This has led to changes in the dating of over 100 New England historic houses, and the 17th century houses that have been tested have now almost all been redated to between 10 and 20 years later than originally thought. So with the restoration of the period rooms, we thought it was the perfect time to have dendrochronology done on the Hart Room. And here you see Daniel Miles from the Oxford Dendrochronology Laboratory in England, who took 6 borings from the structural supports of the Hart Room, and the original Hart House still stands in Ipswich. At the right, over here, as you all recall, a tree grows a ring every year, and here is a cross-section of a tree trunk, and then you can see the annual growth. The boring takes place and goes right here so that you could get the pattern of all of the tree rings. The instrument that Daniel is using is called a core borer, and the dendrochronologist goes into the wood and brings out a cylinder of wood, which is about a ½ inch in diameter. The wood sample goes to the lab, where a computer statistically compares the tree rings with the original site master of chronologies. Good core samplings provide the year and even the precise season when a tree is felled. Samples for the Hart Room dated to the summer of 1678, the winter of 1679, and the summer of 1680. A modest post and beam New England house required at least 12 tons of wood, so you can understand that it might have taken 2 years to harvest all the trees necessary to build a house. In the 17th century, carpenters preferred to work with softer green wood rather than dry wood when building a house. Newly felled trees were typically used within a year of being felled. Using green wood also allowed for the joints to shrink together, tightening their hold as they aged. Though a house might take 2 years to build, the convention is to date a house by the age of its youngest timber. Thus, the Hart house was redated to 1680. This, of course, meant that Thomas Hart was not the owner of this house. He had died 6 years before the trees were felled. Fortunately, however, Thomas Hart's will and probate inventory survive and reveal that he bequeathed his 8-acre homestead to his son, Samuel. So we gave Samuel Hart the ownership of the Hart Room. And once we had a new owner, we needed to find out more about him. We soon discovered that Samuel Hart married Sarah Norton from nearby Salem on February 2nd, 1678, just at the time the first timbers of the new house were being felled. Marriages often brought about the construction of a new house, and so this fit with the scientific research very nicely. Like his father, Samuel was a tanner. Thomas Hart's will documents that Samuel Hart also inherited half of his tanning yard, and Samuel's own probate inventory of 1725 lists many of the tools of the tanner's trade. Leather making was largely a hand-operated trade learned through apprenticeships. In tanning yards, such as the one operated by the Hart brothers, cowhides were washed, cured, tanned into pliable leather to be sold for the production of shoes, gloves, saddles, and other goods in great demand during the 17th century. This woodcut from the German publication, The Book of Trades, shows a tanner cleaning a skin with a beaming or a fleshing knife, one of which was mentioned in Samuel Hart's inventory. Period documents, though rare, also record that Samuel served a term as a town treasurer and contributed funds to the town bell. The life dates of the Hart family members are found on their tombstones that still survive in the Old North Burying Ground of Ipswich, and I'm grateful to Bruce Lanning, who visited the site for us, took this picture, and transcribed the tombstones. Samuel Hart's inventory that I just mentioned is dated September 29th, 1725, and although in nearly illegible condition, we were able to decipher the contents of the 4 rooms of his house. There was a cupboard, chests, boxes for storage, as well as tables, joint stools, and chairs. A bedstead with curtains dominated the parlor where the Harts probably slept. Cooking tools included a metal skillet, iron pots, spit, frying pan, and the family ate with wooden dishes, tinware, and 2 silver spoons. These were the basic furnishings of a modest but comfortable late 17th century house. And thus the Hart Room is furnished with the same forms listed in the inventory. though these are not the furniture that the Hart owned themselves, but rather from the permanent collection. The casement windows in the Hart room, we'll go back again, and the casement windows right here and here in the Hart room with their leaded panes of diamond-shaped glass have been reproduced based on 17th century examples in the museum's collection. The bricks date to the 17th century and were originally used in another Ipswich house, as was the paneling on the fireplace wall, which features bead-molded edges and 2 rows of dentils. Another boon to historic restoration of period rooms is the innovative scholarship being done by scientists and conservators on period paint colors. At the beginning of the current restoration project, the American wing engaged Susan Buck, one of the foremost conservators of paint surfaces and architectural details, to identify the original color and composition of the painted molding in the Hewlett, Verplank, and Alexandra Ballroom period rooms. After taking small samples of paint from the crevices of the room's woodwork, Dr. Buck used cross-section microscopes and pigment analysis techniques to analyze the paints. And the top image here is a cross-section, greatly magnified on with the microscope, of different layers of paint, and you can make out the different layers and the different colors of paint. Once the pigments in the composition of the paint was identified, it was color matched using hand-ground pigments mixed with linseed oil and binders to carefully mix and produce the color, viscosity, and gloss of the original colors. And then a skilled team of historical painters arrived and applied the paint using round and square boar's head brushes similar to those used in the 17th and 18th century. The application process of this paint is very complex. Paint is much different than today's commercial paint, and great care is taken to control the application. Even a change in the direction of a brushstroke can make a difference between a flat and a glossy finish. The resulting look is very unique. The heavily pigmented paint is rich and saturated with a glossy sheen that ages in the traditional manner, yellowing over the years. The marks of the paintbrush remain, and the color is intense, as seen here in the Alexandra Ballroom. Oh, there we go. Another successfully painted room is the Verplank Room. Dr. Buck's scientific analysis of paint fragments taken from this room revealed 2 layers of 18th century paint, one tan, the other gray. The museum curators opted for the gray color as it best complements the pumpkin-colored wool damask upholstery fabric from the room's furniture, which had been a reproduction from the original 18th century curtains donated by the Verplanks. The furniture and the decorative arts in the pre-revolutionary Verplank Room belonged to Samuel Verplank, a member of an influential New York family, and his Dutch-born wife, Judith Cremelian Verplank. When the descendants of the Verplanks donated their furniture and furnishings to the museum, the primary condition of the gift was that the collection be exhibited in one room. This creates a unique experience for viewing one family's taste and their personal interpretation of New York Rococo style. While the furnishings belonging to the Verplanks, the room itself, including the fireplace wall, the paneled dado, and the cornice, came from a Hudson Valley house built in 1767 for Cadwallader and Elizabeth Colden, descendants of another storied New York family. The Verplanks actually lived in this Georgian townhouse at number 3 Wall Street, shown here in a 1789 watercolor. Behind the house was a stable, and to its west is City Hall, renamed Federal Hall in 1789 when George Washington was inaugurated there. The furniture of the museum's Verplank house was likely used here and in the parlor of this grand townhouse. Since no 18th century New York parlors have survived, the woodwork from the Colden House provides a fine example of mid-18th century American woodwork. On the right, you see the Colden's mansion as it appeared in a 19th century print. The paneling was removed from the west parlor, right there, in 1940, just before the then derelict house was about to be demolished. The museum's collection of Verplank family furniture is enhanced by gifts from various members and of documents, mementos, and clothing, jewelry, and paintings. These materials, not on view, can be seen in the touchscreens, and it is artifacts such as these that are a researcher's dream. Here you see the portrait of Samuel Verplank by John Singleton Copley, painted while Copley was in New York City in 1771. Samuel Verplank was a 5th-generation New Yorker, and a colonial deed describes him as a merchant, gentleman, citizen of New York, burgher of Amsterdam, and a governor of King's College. On the right is Samuel Verplank's diploma from King's College, given to the museum by a family member. I called the Columbia Alumni Office to find out about Samuel Verplank, and it caused quite a stir in the office. They were thrilled to discover that Samuel Verplank was the very first student to enroll in King's College when it opened in 1774, and he was a member of its first graduating class 5 years later in 1759. After graduation, Verplank worked at the Amsterdam banking house of his maternal uncle, Daniel Crommelin. While there, he married Crommelin's daughter, Judith, in 1761. Characteristic of the period, this marriage of first cousins helped consolidate the mercantile interests of both families. Their marriage contract is in the museum's collection. It characterizes the bride as a spinster under age and the groom as a bachelor between 21 and 22 years old. But what's exciting about this marriage contract is Judith's dowry. It includes diamond jewelry, a double row of pearls, linens, laces, dress goods, silverware, and a generous gift of 25,000 florins. Here you see Judith Verplank's wedding dress, made of pale green silk brocade with a multicolored floral design, with sleeves trimmed in handsome lace. Here, too, is Samuel Verplank's hand-embroidered waistcoat, possibly made for his wedding. It was certainly reserved for special occasions, when it would have been worn with breeches and a coat. And Amelia discovered yesterday, while we were looking at these slides, that the waistcoat has been repaired by a section of the original fabric from her wedding dress. Here, too, is Judith Verplank's diamond engagement ring, which is now on view in case 20 on the balcony with other rings in the Charles Engelhard Court. After their marriage, the Verplanks spent another year in Holland before relocating to New York City, where they spent the next 12 years living at number 3 Wall Street. In 1775, Samuel and Judith were torn apart by their different stances on the American Revolution. While Samuel supported the American Revolutionary cause, while the British were in New York, he relocated to Mount Gilead, their summer house. Judith, a loyalist, remained in Manhattan until her death in 1803. During the British occupation of Manhattan, Judith Verplank entertained General William Howe, Commander-in-Chief of the British forces. When Howe was recalled to England in 1778, he sent Judith a set of French porcelain and the paintings shown here, The Temptation of Eros and The Victory of Eros. While objects and documents inform the story of the Verplanks, we learn about the life of Samuel and Elizabeth Powell through the people who know them. And here you see the Powell Room on the left. The Powell's house, located 244 South 3rd Street in Philadelphia, appears in this right-hand engraving, right here, dating to 1800. John Adams described this elegant brick Georgian townhouse as a splendid seat. While the museum has portraits of many of the Verplank family members, we do not have portraits of the Powells. The touch screens provide the opportunity to show visitors this elegant couple. Here is Samuel Powell, who, following his graduation from the College of Philadelphia in 1759, embarked on a 7-year grand tour of Europe, where he had this portrait painted by the gifted Swiss artist Angelica Kaufmann. In the portrait, he holds an architectural plan for an unidentified building. This likely indicates his personal interest in Roman architecture, not his profession, as Samuel Powell served as mayor of Philadelphia before and after the Revolution. This allowed the Powells to entertain many of the founding fathers in their home, and it is that quality that first attracted the American Wing curators to purchase his house, the room from his house. Elizabeth Powell is shown here in a portrait by Matthew Pratt. Elizabeth was known for her discerning intelligence, wit, style, and strong opinions. Benjamin Rush dedicated his thoughts upon female education to her, and many luminaries such as John Adams, the Marquis de Chastellux, and George Washington wrote about her. The Marquis de Chastellux praised Elizabeth Powell for her, quote, taste for conversation and the truly European manner in which she used her wit and knowledge. He further observed that, contrary to American custom, she plays the leading role in the family. Upon hearing that George Washington was considering retiring from the presidency after one term, Elizabeth Powell sent him a letter urging him to continue, asserting to him, "You are the only man in America who dares to do right by all public occasions." Although there's no record of her reply from Washington, the letter survives in his archives. We learn something of the way in which the Powells furnished their handsome townhouse, also from the Marquis. Elizabeth Powell, he wrote, received me in a handsome house, furnished in the English manner, adorned with fine prints and some very good copies of the best Italian paintings. And from John Adams, we surmise that the Powells owned many sets of imported china, glass, and silver. In September of 1774, John Adams wrote in his diary, "Dined at Mr. Powell's, a most sinful feast again. Everything that could delight the eye or allure the taste, curds, creams, jellies, sweetmeats of various sorts, 20 sorts of tarts, fool's trifles, floating island, whipped syllabas, etc., etc., Parmesan cheese, punch, wine, beer." She's the woman who will star in our movie of the American Wings. As I've described, we've researched original houses, the way they were moved to the museum, the life of the families that lived in their homes, and we've also added to the touch screens contextual information about furniture. The New York-made Rococo Square card table in the Verplank Room is open to reveal its green baize playing surface with candlesticks on the 4 turret corners and oval dishes that hold the gaming counters. Card playing was a fashionable, often passionate pastime in colonial New York. Card games at home took place in the early afternoon or after the evening meal. When Rebecca Franks of Philadelphia visited New York in 1781, she wrote disparagingly to her sister that few New York ladies know how to entertain company in their homes unless they introduce card tables. The consumption of tea was an established ritual in pre-revolutionary Boston, Philadelphia, and New York. A hostess would serve afternoon tea at a table around which guests sat or stood. She often brewed several different kinds of tea and offered sugar, saffron, and peach leaves for extra flavoring. To ensure good tea, you needed good water, and pumps were installed throughout cities. Peddlers offered this water, walking through the streets, Boston, New York, and Philadelphia, crying, tea water for sale." As you walk through the third floor galleries, you'll discover new cushions on some of the 17th century and William and Mary chairs. The form, fill, and decoration on these cushions was inspired by cushions seen in Dutch 17th century paintings of domestic interiors. Dutch paintings were also used as sources for the curtain hangings of the heart room, which you see here with the curtains drawn. Also notice the looking glass in the Marmion Room, which has just been conserved. I show you the before and after images of the looking glass. Missing pieces of the frame were carved from plaster based on patterns seen in pattern books and then gilded. When the looking glass was nearly finished, it was hung in the Marmion Room, and the new gilded surfaces were retouched and burnished to conform to the original. Since its opening in 1924, the American Ring period rooms have served to educate students about American history, to inform designers, to train the eye of collectors, and to bring America's rich cultural past to visitors from around the world. And we hope they continue to do that. The museum is open until 8:45 tonight, so you can all stay another few hours. There's going to be a lot of traffic in New York right now. Thank you.